Okay, good morning everyone, and this presentation is called Label Schmabble, a fun and exciting guide to marking objects in your collection. I'm going to do a brief overview of different types of objects and how you can mark those objects, and then I'll talk a little bit specifically about what you'll be doing today. Before marking, you need to think about certain things. Will applying this label cause damage to the object? You need to consider the surface. Can this label be easily removed? Will the labeling materials run, fade, abrade, corrode, or age in a way that will damage the artifact? Is the label easy to read? Would the label be easy to locate with little handling of the object? Can the label be easily hidden for display or photography? What will happen if the label gets wet, abraded, or just for normal handling? If you have any doubts about what to do, you should always contact a conservator. Here are some projects that you can use. This one happens to be a kit that you can purchase all together from Hollinger Metal Edge, and it comes with all these different supplies. Here's some other items you can use. The blue pencils are used for marking photographs, tags, B72 acryloid, which we'll be using today with a micron pen. If you prefer, you can also use a rapidograph pen, or some people choose to just use paintable ink. For marking textiles and tying tags onto things, you can use this twill tape. And the bottom corner is just a little sample of Japanese paper that is printed and used with B72 to mark that object. For works on papers or photos, the number is usually applied to the back upper right-hand corner in a non-image area along the edge. For paper photos, apply the number with a number 2 or HB pencil. Do not press hard. You don't want to leave indentations on the front of the photograph. And be sure to write on a firm surface. For plastic-based photographs, you can use a blue photo marking pencil. Redundancy is the key. So in addition to writing on the back of the photo, you can use a label photo or bag to reduce handling. For books, the preferred method is to add a strip of acid-free paper to the book, kind of like a bookmark with label information, as you can see in these photos. The inside cover and reverse of title page are also common, so the book doesn't have to be opened all the way. Choose a location that will not show during exhibit or photography. Avoid labeling in an area that already has information written there, such as a price, the owner's name, the signature, etc., to avoid confusion. Apply the number with the number 2 or HB pencil, taking care not to press hard enough to make indentations on the surface. Also, again, as with photos, make sure you write on a firm surface. Again, redundancy is key, so use a labeled bag or folder with the number on it as well. For plastic, vinyl, lacquer, resin, and rubber, you need to be careful because these items are fragile. It can have an adverse reaction to the solvents that are in B72. Some are sensitive to water-based adhesives, so make sure you're thinking about what you're doing before doing it, or as I said before, contact a conservator. The best recommendation is to act conservatively with these objects and use a paper tag and place them in a box for redundancy and not use the B72 at all. Paintings and framed objects. Avoid removing old labels from the backs of paintings because that is part of their history. Use a paper tag attached to the screw eye, D-ring, or other hanging hardware. This allows a painting to be identified without excess handling. Put a paper label on both sides. So if the painting is hanging on a painting screen, you don't have to pick it up, lift it. If you're on the left side, you can find the label, or on the right side. If there are no hanging devices for tags, you can generally apply B72 to the stretcher or backing board in the upper right-hand corner. But as always, avoid touching the canvas. As you can see in the sample, it is important to put all of the information on one side of the tag. This would include your tombstone information, such as the object number, the artist name, title, and date. On the other side, you can just put the number. For textiles, if textiles are strong enough, a sewn technique with Tyvek or twill tape and cotton thread is recommended. Clothing is often labeled where the manufacturer's label might be located. For large rolled objects, it is best to label diagonal corners for access. Be consistent. Sew into the seams or original stitch holes whenever possible. The second best option is to pass the needle between the weave, being careful not to pierce the threads. Stitch the label with the loop through 2 holes at each end, so minimal snips are necessary when you need to remove them. As you can see with the bag on the top, they wrote the number on twill tape and then just put a couple of little stitches in place so that you could see the tag. For leathers, feathers, skins, and fur, large feathers can be labeled on the quill with B72. Adhesive labels are not recommended. Some feather and skin items are sewn and a tie-back label sewn through original stitch holes with white cotton thread may be possible. Do not make new holes. If you cannot stitch a label, use a paper tag or label the enclosure or the box only. Taxidermy is typically labeled with a tag around the leg and also the mount support if necessary. For ceramics and glass, you should label on the underside with B72, unless the object is large, and then you may choose to label the back or use a paper label because it's too big to lift up to see the bottom. Make sure the area is smooth, not flaky, powdery, painted, or decorated. You do not want to mark on painted surfaces. Choose a discrete location. Do not interfere with markers on the bottom, such as manufacturer's numbers and that type of thing. Use a paper tag, a label box as redundancy to reduce handling of the objects. For metals, you can label with B72 on the other side or in a discrete location. Locate a smooth area that is not flaky, powdery, rusty, decorated, or coated, like a musical instrument might be coated. Coins are usually not labeled directly. The edges can be labeled if large enough, but usually they're too small to apply the B72, so you have to put them in a little bag. Apply a base coat of B72, put your paper label on the top, as seen in the picture on the right, and then put on the top coat. Avoid artist acrylics and adhesives containing ammonia with copper or alloys with copper such as sterling silver. When in doubt, ask a conservator. Also, again, use a paper tag, labeling box, labeled bag, or box to reduce handling. Jewelry may be especially difficult to label, even with the tiny font size. Redundant tags are always helpful in that case. For wooden furnishings, you can use B72, but it's often hard to find on the large furniture. But you should always avoid areas that are painted, varnished, or otherwise coated. Look for an area that is bare wood. Locate a smooth area that is not rough, splintery, or decorated. And because of all these limitations, I find it often better just to put maybe 2 paper tags if you can on the furniture. That's also good for redundancy. So how do you use B72? And this is one of the things you're going to be doing today. So once you've determined that B72 is safe for your object, you need to follow these steps. Number 1, you need to work in a well-ventilated area. Again, determine the best location to apply before you start working and make sure that area is clean. If you're painting on a dark object, you should use white B72, and you should use clear for light colored objects. Today for our activity, we are only using the clear, but we also have paper numbers that you can use on the dark objects. Apply a barrier coat swiping in one direction and then the other. If you're using a pen or ink for marking, make sure the barrier coat is dry enough for marking. If you're using a pen or ink for marking, make sure the barrier, If you're using a pen or ink for marking, make sure a barrier coat is dry enough for marking. If you're using acid-free paper or Japanese paper method, apply the number on the back with tweezers when it's tacky enough for the paper to stick. Once the ink is dry, apply a single coat of B72 on top. Once these coats are completely dry, you do step 5 again, swiping a coat in one direction and then swiping again in the other direction. If you're looking for supplies for marking objects, this is a list of a few vendors that you might choose. These are some really good resources you can find online. The National Park Service is really great with their conservograms, and AAM has a lot of good resources as well. And there are a few other resources you might want to look at on this list. Thank you.